Thank you, the Honorable Attorney General, Justin Muturi. Mr. Thomas Asare, Comptroller and Director of Finance and Administration Management of the Unicef, and also to recognize Madam Hanan Suleiman, Secretary General of Unicef, senior staff members in the Unicef Operations and Finance, Madam Sabina Chege. I was talking to her about her charge a few minutes ago. That's why I was looking at her, because she took me to her church in Muranga for a function there some time back. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very brief because I know you have a long day ahead of you, and we should have been here in the morning, but I was diverted because the President was also officially opening the Connect Africa meeting, and I was part of the program there. So please accept my apologies, but let me go straight to the business. I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to all of you participating in this global operations and finance meeting of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Let me also, on behalf of the government and people of Kenya, express my appreciation to UNICEF for choosing Kenya to not only host its global office, but also the decision to hold this important meeting here. This exemplifies the collaboration and mutual trust that Kenya and UNICEF enjoy with each other. Kenya has demonstrated its firm commitment to advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, especially in the critical areas of child health, education, and social protection. We are fully cognizant of the importance of these SDGs in guiding and shaping a brighter future for our next generation, and the crucial roles that finance and operations hold in achieving these objectives. Reflecting on my experience in government, especially during the period at the helm of steering the economy as a former Minister of Finance, I know firsthand the significance of putting in place sound financial and operational mechanisms for the success of organizations like UNICEF. Efficient, transparent, and accountable financial management is not just a necessity, but a cornerstone for sustainable development. Fiduciary accountability ensures that resources are utilized effectively and ethically, focused on the measured outcomes so as to impact the beneficiaries. I therefore encourage all of you participating in this meeting to embrace best practices in financial management, safeguard resources, minimize waste, and ensure that they are channeled towards their intended purposes. Let us collectively strive to enhance our financial and operational strategies, setting a solid foundation for the realization of UNICEF's goals and ultimately the well-being of children across the globe. I wish you fruitful deliberations in your proceedings. The outcomes of your meeting will pave the way for enhanced financial and operational strategies that will propel us closer to realizing UNICEF's noble mission and vision. Together, We will champion financial sustainability, transparency, and accountability as we work towards a brighter and indeed sustainable future for our children. Madam Secretary General, let me just highlight one or two things. A few days ago, Germany, in conjunction with the European Union and France, convened a meeting in Paris to deal with resource mobilization for the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in Sudan, which I'm sure all of you know when you look at the data across the conflict areas. It is actually the country with the largest displaced people, the country that is today suffering the biggest crisis in terms of the humanitarian crisis. And that meeting was convened to bring the spotlight back to what is unfolding, but because sometimes the media attention may be different, we have focused a lot on the challenges in Ukraine, challenges in the Gaza, and what is unraveling right in the middle of the continent, in the 15th largest country in the world, seems to be going unnoticed. Why do I bring this up? Because the conflicts in Africa have now put close to 98 million children out of school. Their schools have been destroyed. Some have become relief centers. Some have been taken over by the military in those, or the warring factions in those areas. And therefore, the challenge and the impact on our children is going to be very devastating, and it will last for a long time. We live in an area where coups and all sorts of conflict take more than 40 years for our nation to recover. Now, what happens to the young and budding brains during that period? What happens to them? What do they become? Then there are the challenges you deal with, vaccinations, the school feeding programs, and all this that all help to bring up the children. And Unicef is right at the center of some of these challenges. Even here in Kenya, you've been giving us a lot of support on vaccinations of maybe malaria, polio, and all sorts of diseases that are very dangerous when they get to anybody, let alone to the children. So why do I bring this up? The target at this convening was that the world needed to raise about $4 billion to intervene on the humanitarian crisis in Sudan. The session got pledges of $2 billion. That is 50% of the projected target of 4. Now, here you are sitting here, and so many other people sitting elsewhere. Can you imagine that we are raising this kind of resources for humanitarian intervention and not for building schools and providing medicine as we should for our young children, particularly in the continent of Africa? So the crisis that we are in today is mind-boggling and scary. Because if we are to get out of the challenges that we are talking about and the focus as we manage, we are now raising resources that I don't know how the African continent would have been if we were raising this 4 billion or so in peacetime, in a moment when those resources, either through Unicef or through any other body, are being targeted to the well-being of children. You can imagine the impact that it would have on our lives and into the future. So as we look at the resources here that have to be raised even for UNICEF, it is unfortunate that you are now competing with conflict. Resources are being diverted. The Congress has just passed these bills. When you see the figures that are supposed to go, say, to the Ukraine or go into Gaza, compare it to what you, as UNICEF, are trying to mobilize for the children of this world. So serious interventions are required across the globe, internally in governments and in our institutions. But primarily, the message I'm trying to put across here, as we look at the financial management, is that perhaps the most critical ingredient at the end of the day is a peaceful environment that can allow us to resource appropriately and also use those resources to better the lives of our people, wherever they may be. So let me end there by reiterating that as a government, we fully support and welcome the efforts of UNICEF, and more so as you deliberate here. And we are happy to be one of the very few stations that has been identified by UNICEF through the headquarters initiative, efficiency initiative, to be one of the stations, perhaps the first one in, I think the only one in Africa, so to speak, in this reorganization that is taking place. So make this station shine through your very good individual and collective efforts as the people at the focal point of taking care of our children and managing their resources. Asanteni sana, I wish you all the best, and may you have extremely positive conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the words of wisdom and in the remarks that you've made. And thank you, Attorney General, also for your remarks. And thank you, Honorable Shege, for coming. We would, can staff still remain seated, as we will want to have a photograph with His Excellency at the backstage. And so I will request that staff get seated while we move to Madam Suleiman. Do you want to make a remark? Okay.
Your Excellency, Excellencies, thank you very much. You really said it all, Your Excellency, so I will just add a few words and just acknowledge the facts that you put upon us, where in an environment where we should be investing in children's development, we see that day by day we're investing more in humanitarian interventions. And this is a sad state of affairs globally currently. And what we have seen since COVID pandemic and since crises that have emanated since then is that no child is protected from crisis. This is something that can happen anywhere in the world at any point in time, and a child is a child, and it is our duty to support them. And our partnership with Kenya is one of those examples where we have worked very closely, not just supporting the children of Kenya, but also children in the region and children globally. And this is really something that stands for such a noble cause that we share, and we continue to shine with that example, because Kenya has always been very generous and open to supporting the programs that UNICEF does also in neighboring countries, not just the programs, but also hosting our teams. We have our Sudan team here. In the past, we've had the Somalia team here as well. And Kenya has always been there to accommodate and to support to the critical needs of children. And that is why we were so incredibly humbled by the welcome that we have received from the government of Kenya to now have a headquarters based in Africa, where the majority of UNICEF programs are. We pray for the day when the majority of our programs are not in Africa, and we will get there together. We know that for sure. So thank you, Your Excellency, for your time and for joining us today. And I know that many of your team members worked really hard with us to get the agreements in place and to make things happen in record time, really. So we have so much to be thankful for today, and we look forward to this continued and very, very constructive partnership. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Madam Sloman. So, Your Excellency, we're going to be moved backstage for the pictures.